Radio. ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
Partly sunny, windy, and warm today with a high temp of 55. Rain moves in after midnight. Will drop to a low of 32. The rain will change to snow tomorrow morning with little accumulation. Temps will fall into the 20s. I'm John Bailey for 1410 ESPN Radio.
All those mouths to feed. So many different cravings. In a world filled with endless dinner options, lives a family ravaged by hunger. The answer lies with one man. No, not just a man, a king, a pizza king. Get a large Casano's Deluxe Pizza for $15.99 or a large pepperoni for just $12.99. Call 294-KING and see for yourself why the proof is in the taste. Pizza King.
It's the Justin Kinner Show, live here on ESPN Dayton, 1410 Wing AM. Tweet the show at 1410 Kinner or give us a call at 457-9464. We now send you to the Wing Studios in Kettering. Here's your host, Justin Kinner.
Everybody, welcome in. It is the Justin Kinner Show. Nash, finest Steph Nash. I'm here on Dayton's ESPN radio station, 1410 Wing AM. How are all of you? We welcome you back here. It's been a little bit since Nash in the air. No Kev today. Kev will return beginning next week. And we honestly only have a short day with you here today. We're only with you for a little bit. Again, Ohio State basketball. Ohio State Rutgers coming up. They tip off at 4:30. Their pregame will take over coming up at 3:45. But I figure I have 45 minutes to squeeze in here to hang out with you guys today. And there's plenty to get into, of course. How about the Cleveland Browns in 2 weeks from now? Just under 2 weeks from now, we could be talking about the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the battle for the AFC North regular season title. How about that? I don't think any of us anticipated that even a month ago, and yet here we are. The Cincinnati Bengals get a huge win over the Pittsburgh Steelers this past Monday night. We'll get into that, but I want to open up with some college football playoff talk because that's been, of course, the big talking point across the board, and rightfully so. During this pandemic, it amazes me how many times we have said, well, it's not going to be the same because of the pandemic, but we're just grateful to have it. We were just grateful to have the NBA come back. We were grateful to have even a baseball season at all. We're lucky to even have a college football season. We're lucky to have a college basketball season. I keep hearing people trying to say the right things. I keep hearing people trying to do and say the right things when it comes to, the pandemic. It's better than nothing. It's not going to be the same. It's going to be different. We keep trying to convince ourselves that, hey, everything's going to be different because of the pandemic, but yet we complain as if everything's normal. We complain as if everything has just gone to plan. Literally, college football went on a week-by-week basis where we had no idea how many of the slotted games were even going to get in. We had no idea when the Big Ten was even technically going to kick off. When it did kick off, it was a mess from the very beginning. You had Wisconsin, who played in the very first Big Ten game of the season. They didn't play for another 3 weeks after that. They only got 4 total games in on the year. Ohio State fought and clawed and screamed and kicked and cried and did everything that they possibly could to get a season in. They get the season going. They get probably hit harder than most teams in the Big Ten, whether it's their team's outbreak or another team's outbreak. We knew it was going to be a bumpy ride, but yet we still sit here and complain. We complain about Kevin Warren. We complain about the Big Ten. We complain about the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. We complain about all of this stuff that really we have no control over. And yet we keep trying to say the right things. We keep trying to convince people that, well, because of the pandemic, it's going to be different. And I've accepted that, but yet you don't accept it. You still complain. You still bitch, cry, moan, and complain, and it drives me nuts. Nothing about this season has been normal. So I bring all that up because I don't want to hear about what is fair and not fair for teams. Because nothing is fair about anything that even us normal common folk down here at the bottom are going through on a daily basis thanks to COVID-19. So if you want me to waste any kind of energy feeling bad for a Cincinnati Bearcat team, I'm not. Yeah, Brady, no kidding. Complaining about complaining. That's what I'm doing here. It makes a lot of sense, I know, but that's really the only thing that ever makes sense about this show from time to time. Complaining about complaining is right. But if you expect me to feel sorry for a Cincinnati Bearcat team or a Buckeye team who only got 6 games in or anything, I don't. I don't feel bad for any of the teams because they're lucky they got a season in. Cincinnati didn't play this past weekend. They played, but it was the first time in over 3.5 weeks they hadn't played since before Thanksgiving. But they're lucky to play. They're lucky to have a season. They're lucky to even be in position where we can complain about them not making the college football playoff. We are fortunate to have a season. We are fortunate to even be talking about who made the Final Four. We're lucky that we even have a Final Four. We're lucky that we even get to see Clemson, Ohio State, Part 5, Part 2, technically, between Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. Like, I love this matchup. I love this rivalry, potential rivalry. I'm not willing to call it that. Other people are. I'm going to get into that in a moment. But I heard way too much complaining over the weekend about the selection committee. Oh, it's not fair. I mean, it's from Joel Klatt. I'm hearing it from ESPN, broadcasters, everything. Folks, let me ask you this. The purpose of the college football playoff was to what? To what? I hopped on Keith Byers' show earlier today. He asked me, did the college football playoff committee get it right? And I said, well, your opinion on whether you think they got it right is always going to be based on what you truly believe the college football playoff is supposed to replicate. And what it is supposed to accomplish is to have the 4 best teams in the college football playoff. Is Cincinnati better than Notre Dame? No, they're not. They're not. Is Cincinnati better than Ohio State? No, I don't think so. But they're better than Clemson. No, they're not better than Clemson either. But they have to be better than Alabama, right? No, they're not better than Alabama. So how did Cincinnati get screwed? How did the Bearcats get screwed here, folks? What am I missing? Do they have better players? No. Do they have better coaching than Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, or Ohio State? No. Better recruiting classes? No. Better schedule? No. Better wins? No. Like, what am I missing? What am I missing that is not fair about this system? Don't tell me that this was not this was not created for the Cincinnatis of the world. I also touched on this with Keith Byers earlier. I keep hearing a lot of, well, Cincinnati, it's not fair that they can't control their conference schedule. But they can control their non-conference schedule, right? Maybe not necessarily this year, but in years past. Now, to give Cincinnati credit, they have put good teams on their non-conference schedule. For instance, they put Ohio State on their schedule last year. They got shut out 42-0 or whatever it was. But they put Austin Peay on their schedule this year. They put Miami of Ohio on their non-conference schedule this year. They put Western Michigan, I believe, on their schedule this year. Like, they put a lot of meaningless games in the non-conference. So my thing about Cincinnati is this. I don't feel bad that they didn't make the college football playoff, because even had this been a regular season, they may not be able to control who they play in the conference portion, but you damn well can control who you play in the non-conference. And you need to do a better job of putting better teams in your non-conference slate. Now, I told you those teams that Cincinnati put in their non-conference, they did have a road game at Big Ten Nebraska. Okay. Had they beat Nebraska, that's a good quality win. They would be able to at least have that in their pocket on top of being undefeated in their conference as conference champions. I would support that. But folks, let me ask you again. Let's say Cincinnati had gotten a game in with Nebraska this year, and let's say they beat Nebraska. Are they better than Notre Dame? Are they still better than Clemson? Are they still better than Ohio State? Are they still better than Alabama? No. Stop this crying about how it's not fair for Cincinnati. You may not be able, if you're the Bearcats, you may not be able to control who you play in your conference. Load up your non-conference with good quality opponents. And don't say, oh, well, then they're going to have tough games in the conference. If you mean to tell me that SMU and Houston and Memphis and those teams, like if Luke Fickell and Cincinnati is losing sleep over those opponents, while Ohio State is facing Penn State and Michigan in those teams, I don't feel bad for Cincinnati. If Ohio State could put an Oregon in their non-conference, all while having to play Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, and those guys, I'm pretty sure Cincinnati can afford to load up a top-heavy non-conference schedule and then have it take it easy the rest of the way. If Cincinnati is trying to convince me and all the doubters out there that they are as good as Ohio State, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Alabama, schedule like them. Now you're saying, oh, but Alabama, they schedule La Citadel. When you play LSU And when you play Florida and Georgia and Auburn, you could put La Citadel on your schedule. It's kind of the opposite. Don't stress yourself out to start the season when you have all the stress in the meat of your conference. Cincinnati's the opposite. If you are trying to convince me that you are as good as Ohio State and everyone else, the meat of your schedule should come in the non-conference because you are going to have cake in the middle of your conference schedule. And if you are trying to tell me that Memphis and Houston and those teams are a challenge to you, then you know what? They wouldn't be a challenge to Alabama. They wouldn't be a challenge to Clemson. They definitely wouldn't be a challenge to Ohio State, to Notre Dame. So can we stop? Let's stop. Cincinnati did not get screwed here. They did not do enough to prove that they deserve to be in the playoff. They had a fantastic, cute, little, adorable, undefeated season. Now, pat Luke Fickell on the head, give him his coach of the year, give him a New Year's Bowl game, and send him on his way. Folks, this isn't hard. This isn't hard. I'm not saying like Cincinnati didn't have a bad season. The committee's not out to get the little guy. The committee just has common sense, something a lot of you people lack. No offense. And I know I'm doing the whole no offense thing. Usually when someone says no offense, I promise you anything they say after the no offense part, it's usually offensive. But I'm telling you right now, if you think Cincinnati deserved to be in the playoff, you are not smarter than the committee. You're just not, because the committee's job is to get the 4 best teams in there. And if you are actually at home right now, thinking about Christmas morning, thinking about the presents you got for your kids, thinking about the presents you got for your parents, your grandparents, or whoever, if you're thinking about all of those things, all while thinking that Cincinnati deserved to be in the playoffs, all of those are adorable thoughts except for one. And it has nothing to do with your family's Christmas. It has everything to do with you actually truly believing Cincinnati deserves to be in the playoff. Now, this is a good question right here. Chris says Cincy versus Georgia prediction. I'll get into that coming up here in a moment, because here's what's going to happen. It's the same thing that happened with UCF a few years ago. UCF, did they beat Auburn, Chris? I can't remember. The UCF, they split against the SEC, if I'm not mistaken, on those 2 back-to-back undefeated years. So they went undefeated, those back-to-back regular seasons. They beat some SEC teams in their bowl season, and then everyone said, see, they beat Auburn in their bowl game. They should have been in the playoff. Folks, I'm not. Maybe Cincinnati is capable of pulling off an upset against an Ohio State or a Clemson or a Bama or even a Notre Dame. But again, I am not going. Like, I hate when people say that. Well, losses have to mean something. They do mean something, but there are weighted losses. I can forgive you for some losses more than I can others. Also, going undefeated. There is not. Notre Dame would be undefeated if they didn't have to play Clemson at the end of the year. Notre Dame would be undefeated if they didn't have to. Notre Dame would be undefeated with Cincinnati's schedule. So all I'm saying is I'm not saying Cincinnati's a bad team, but folks, let's stop it with the fact that you actually believe that they are a top 4 team. They are not. They are not. The committee's job was to get the 4 best teams in the college football playoff, and they did that. They did that. And this is why I'm adamantly against expanding the playoff to more. Folks, I'm not even sure Notre Dame is as good as the other 3. I keep saying, is Cincinnati better than the 4 best teams in the country? There are 3 elite teams, and then there's Notre Dame. And Ohio State has showed some vulnerability, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they have Justin Fields, because they have Ryan Day, because they are the Buckeyes. They have looked vulnerable against the 2 best opponents they've played this year, but it's still the Ohio State University, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But we have really struggled over the years to find 4 legit teams. That's why people, when they get annoyed, like I've never said Cincinnati doesn't deserve to be in the playoff because they'll just get blown out against Alabama. That's a BS excuse, because how many blowouts have we seen 1 versus 4? Look at last year. LSU embarrassed Oklahoma so bad, the game was over by the end of the first quarter. It was 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. It was embarrassingly bad. Blowouts are going to happen. But the problem is I don't believe that there has been one full season that we have had. So 2014, the college football playoff. Can you argue that there were 4 national title contenders in the playoff? I can't. Can you think of one year where all 4 teams were true national title contenders? No. This year, we're going to say Ohio State's a title contender because we buy into everything they do. Nationally, there's 2 title contenders this year. It's Alabama and Clemson. Now, I'm not hating. I'm not stirring the pot. But if you listen to all the national shows out there, which doesn't technically mean nothing in regards to Ohio State being able to win a title, but the perception is that Alabama and Clemson are the only two real national title threats this year. That Notre Dame, they showed their weaknesses against Clemson last weekend, and that Ohio State really has looked very weak and vulnerable against the two best teams they played this year in Indiana and Northwestern, two teams that would probably get blown out by 20, 30-plus points against Alabama or Clemson any other day of the week. So there is that. But the problem is, I don't want more teams in the playoff. We could barely get four. We could barely get four title contenders in the best four. Every year, we have not gotten the four most dominant teams. We got the four best teams with two dominant teams, a good team, and a bad fourth team. So all I'm going to say is this: I didn't lose sleep when the Final Four came out. I was like, we already knew what it was going to be. The fact that there were actually Bearcat fans going to sleep on Saturday night, waking up Sunday morning with their fingers crossed. It was adorable. It was cute. But I feel bad for you. I feel bad that you actually thought a team who played Tulsa close in a championship game was going to actually rub out any other undefeated team that was in the college football playoff discussion. Now, not forget undefeated. You have two teams like Clemson loses to Notre Dame, number 2 team in the country for pretty much the whole year. Notre Dame loses to the number 4 team in the country or 3 team in the country in Clemson. That's a good loss to have. I'm sorry, there are losses that are actually better than wins. I said it weeks ago that, for everyone out there that is saying that Cincinnati got screwed out of the college football playoff, they did not. If there's any team that got screwed out of anything here, the biggest victim of the weekend, folks, was Indiana. Indiana not playing on New Year's Day, that's the biggest robbery out there. Indiana showed me more this year than Cincinnati, period, because of who they play. Indiana's loss, their one possession loss to Ohio State, was more impressive than any of the wins that Cincinnati had. Does anyone disagree? Indiana went up against one of the best teams in the country in Ohio State, and they lost by one possession at Ohio State. That, to me, was more impressive than any win that the Bearcats had this year, period. And the Bearcats got screwed? No, the Bearcats didn't get screwed. You got your New Year's game. You got Georgia. Go beat Georgia. If you don't beat Georgia, oh, man. Oh, man. All right, let's continue talking some college football playoffs. Again, just me today. Kev Nash will return coming up on Monday. I'm glad to be back with you here today. Took a little time off. Kev's off for the rest of the week. But we're only with you for a little bit of time today. Ohio State Rutgers will tip off coming up at 4:30. Their pregame will take over at 3:45. So I only got a little bit of time with you. So keep that in mind. But no, I'm pumped about this Ohio State Clemson game. This Ohio State Clemson game, it has me in all the feels. I'm jacked. I'm excited. Me and Kev talk about this all the time. There's not a lot of games throughout the year for Ohio State where I'm nervous the night before, where I'm nervous leading into it. Ohio State has outgrown the Big Ten. There is not one opponent in the Big Ten that ever makes me nervous. Not one. There might be opponents that I'm like, okay, good. They might make this interesting, but I'm not nervous about it. Clemson makes me nervous, and that's what I love. I love when, and I think the SEC fans have more fun being Alabama fans than we do being Buckeye fans from a matchup perspective, because there are weeks where Alabama's like, oh man, this, LSU, maybe not this particular season, but you see my point, the LSUs, the Floridas, the Georgias of the world, like there's more title threats in that conference than in the Big Ten. Ohio State has outgrown that conference by so much that I don't fear anybody in that conference. I don't get nervous for games. I don't even look forward to matchups. I just look forward to watching the Scarlet and Gray on Saturdays, and that's about it. But I don't fear a loss. I don't look forward to a game. I don't look forward to a matchup. I look forward to the game to watch the Buckeyes, but I don't look forward to Ohio State versus this opponent. It just doesn't exist. It does in the playoff because Ohio State has built themselves, and to be fair, Clemson did the same thing in the ACC. Clemson has built themselves to be head and shoulders better than everyone else in that conference. And I'm not talking about Notre Dame because they're just pretending to be in the conference this year. They don't count. So Ohio State and Clemson, they're very interesting stories. But I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to go to commercial break. I'm going to line up some calls. We'll take some when I come back. I heard, was it Austin Ward with Letterman Row? He put out an article earlier today highlighting the rivalry that is Ohio State and Clemson. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not a rivalry. It's so one-sided that it can't be a rivalry. Ohio State, this game is bigger than just a playoff game on New Year's Day for Ohio State. This game is so much bigger for Ohio State than it is for Clemson. Now, a lot's on the line, but think about this. We ripped Dabo Swinney, but Dabo Swinney has owned college football for going on over half a decade now, has multiple wins over Alabama and Nick Saban. Urban Meyer, one of the greatest coaches of all time, has never figured out a way to beat Dabo Swinney. Ryan Day, in his first attempt, couldn't beat Dabo Swinney. The reason we hate Dabo Swinney now is because we can't beat him. Ryan Day and the Buckeyes have a huge opportunity to shut him up come New Year's Day. But to call it a rivalry, it can't be a rivalry until Ohio State gets a victory over the Tigers. We're going to talk about that on the other side of the break. You are listening to the Justin Kinner Show right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Don't go anywhere. We will be back on the other side of the break. Is Ohio State and Clemson a rivalry? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Do you agree? I don't think it is. I'm going to head to commercial break, line up some of your calls, and you can help me out on that discussion on the other side. Merry Christmas, everybody. We'll be back in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere.
This year, get a gift for the crew and something for you, too. Shop Lowe's in-store or at lowesforpros.com for brands like DeWalt, Metabo, HPT, Yeti, and more. While supplies last, U.S. only.
Save on all of your home improvement projects with Menards. From framing and roofing nailers to finish and brad nailers, Menards has a large selection of Metabo HPT air nailers to choose from to help you get the job done. The 18-gauge pneumatic brad nailer is ideal for trim work, furniture building, and other finish applications. Get it for $49.98 now at Menards. Prices are good through Thursday, December 24th. Plus, give the perfect gift with a Menards gift card.
The holidays are here, and Rob's Beer Barn is stocked with the newest seasonal refreshments, and they're going fast. Pick up your specialty beers before they're gone. Rob's Beer Barn has you covered for all your gatherings with ice-cold refreshments, craft, imported, local, and seasonal beers, fine wines, snacks, and ice. Rob's has it all, and for last-minute items, you can call, walk in, or drive through. Stop in and visit Rob's and stock up today. Rob's Beer Barn on Indian Ripple Road at Darst, just a mile east of the Green. Rob's Beer Barn. Look for the beaver.
This is Dr. Mashika Roberts, Columbus Health Commissioner. The pandemic is more than a physical health issue. As parents, it's important to remember that our children are also coping with drastic life changes. 1 in 4 teens misuse a prescription drug at least once in their lifetime. We must talk to our kids about healthy coping strategies and the dangers of prescription drug misuse. Visit don'tliveinDenial.org to learn how to dispose of your leftover pills and talk to your kids about opiates.
Would you like a cleaning product that can be used in the garage, the laundry, and the kitchen, and save space in your cabinet? Hi, I'm Bruce Fabrizio, inventor of Simple Green. To learn more, visit us at simplegreen.com.
On any day in December, Pizza Hut can give to you
the Triple Treat Box, 2 pizzas, breadsticks, and Cinnabon mini rolls. Order online at pizzahut.com. No Without Pizza's The Hut. Exclusions apply. Combinability of discounts and specials, prices, and participation vary. Additional charge for extra toppings and crust.
Omaha Steaks is partnering with Feeding America to help make the holidays brighter for families in need. They've helped provide almost 2 million meals so far in 2020. And when you send select gifts, you'll be helping provide up to 2.5 million more. These gifts deliver steak, meals, and holiday cheer directly to someone's door. And a contribution to Feeding America is automatically included. You can shop Omaha Steaks, gifts that give back, and donate at www.omahasteaks.com/feedingamerica.
This year, get a gift for the crew and something for you, too. Shop Lowe's in-store or at lowesforpros.com for brands like DeWalt, Metabo, HPT, Yeti, and more. While supplies last, U.S. only.
Friggin' chicken chunks, friggin' chicken chunks, friggin' chicken chunks, friggin' chicken chunks. $29.99 each, 2 4 pounds of friggin' chicken chunks. You can get the 4 sauces too. 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 Friggin' chicken chunks.
Ring in the season with 4 pounds of frickin' chicken chunks. Buy a $25 Frickers gift card and get 5 frickin' bonus bucks free. The ho home for fun, food, sports, and spirits is Frickers.
Friggin' chicken chunks, 4 sauces too. Friggin' chicken chunks, 4 friggin' pounds.
The spread of COVID-19 is still unchecked across the nation, and you need to keep your family safe. Make a new habit and check your temperatures twice a day.
once before dinner and before leaving home in the morning. You can't afford to take chances, so use the Exergen Temporal Scanner. Its accuracy is backed by more than 80 clinical studies, and it takes an accurate reading in seconds. It's the only home thermometer used and recommended by hospitals, doctors, and nurses. Quick and easy to use. You can count on Exergen to keep your family safe 24 hours a day.
Cordell Transportation is now hiring for brand new home daily dedicated lanes. Earn up to $1,620 per week. A $2,000 sign-on bonus, medical, dental, vision, company paid life insurance. Apply online at CordellTransportation.com.
This year, get a gift for the crew and something for you, too. Shop Lowe's in-store or at Lowe'sForPros.com for brands like DeWalt, Metabo, HPT, Yeti, and more. While supplies last, U.S. only.
All those mouths to feed. So many different cravings. In a world filled with endless dinner options, lives a family ravaged by hunger. The answer lies with one man. No, not just a man, a king, a pizza king. Get a large Casanos Deluxe pizza for $15.99 or a large pepperoni for just $12.99. Call 294-KING and see for yourself why the proof is in the taste. Pizza King.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think of calling for a ride, but nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that could happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone. The results of driving drunk are tragic. That's why law enforcement is out there looking for impaired drivers to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.
When the weather outside is frightful, the Hyundai Santa Fe is, delightful. Because it's got available H-Track all-wheel drive to make being out together better. Enter for your chance to win the newly redesigned Santa Fe, packed with all the jingle bells and whistles you need to go dashing through the snow together. To enter, visit Amazon.com/Hyundai or scan the QR code on specially marked red and green Amazon boxes. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
A sports injury, low back pain, or are you interested in improving your performance and getting to the next level? Orion Sports Medicine is truly a unique sports medicine and physical therapy clinic and training facility. We offer a highly educated staff that has experience working with athletes from the recreational and youth levels to elite professionals. We offer services that include PT, functional assessment, wellness, fitness, return to sport, sports performance, strength and conditioning, speed and agility training, all at our state-of-the-art facility in Miamisburg. For more information on Orion Sports Medicine, visit orionsportsmedicine.com.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control of your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank accounts, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problem now by calling the experts at U.S. Tax Shield and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. U.S. Tax Shield offers a price protection guaranteed quote to get you protected today. U.S. Tax Shield is A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau, so call now. 800-687-5192. That's 800-687-5192. U.S. Tax Shield. 800-687-5192.
This year, get a gift for the crew and something for you, too. Shop Lowe's in-store or at Lowe'sForPros.com for brands like DeWalt, Metabo, HPT, Yeti, and more. While supplies last, U.S. only.
Don't miss the only weekly hour of radio dedicated to Dayton Flyers basketball. It's Talking Out Loud, hosted by Sully. Thursday nights at 6 p.m. on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, and online at wingam.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Justin Kinner with you here on a Wednesday, just a couple days away from Christmas. I can't believe it. As bad as this year has been, to be honest, it really has kind of flown by a little bit, right? Like, it's I mean, I'm sure every year at this time of year, we're always saying, man, I can't believe it doesn't feel like Christmas is almost here. It's almost here. But this year, especially with how bad it is, you think this year would kind of drag a little bit, and this year has definitely dragged. But I mean, it's already Christmas. I don't know. It is what it is. But excited for the holidays coming up here, for Christmas coming up here in just a few days. Spend some time with family. Excited for that coming up. All right. Back into the discussion. Ohio State Clemson. Is it a rivalry? I want to get back to the Facebook reaction real quick, too, before we get into that. So I opened up the show reacting to a lot of the Cincinnati reaction, the Bearcats, of just being screwed over. The real victim here, I mean, Joel Klatt talking about the Bearcats, how they got screwed over the playoff system, that they're just a victim of the playoff system. They're not a victim of the playoff system. For one, I hate when people say, the college football playoff's goal is to get the 4 best teams in the playoff. How is that a bad system? How is that a bad goal to have? Well, it's not a bad goal to have, but it's the way they do it. You want them to go about it differently just to still get the same results? They got the 4 best teams. The playoff did nothing wrong. Oh, but they didn't let Cincinnati. Someone said, that Cincinnati should have been. Oh, here it is. Chris said, I agree that UC should not have been in the playoff, but they should be top 6. Well, let me ask you, Chris, and anyone out there, and Chris, I know you're not really defending the Bearcats, but I see your point. You're basically saying they should be top 6. What does top 6 get you? If you're not in the top 4, who cares? Well, if you're just on the outside, you still get a New Year's Day game. Cincinnati has that. So Cincinnati knew they weren't going to be a playoff team even coming in. It was going to be, right? So the best you could do if you're the Bearcats, go undefeated, win your conference championship, play on New Year's Day, win your bowl game against a Power 5 school, tip your hat. Great year. Everything's going as planned. The 4 teams we figured were going to be in, the second that the Big Ten announced that they were going to actually have a season, we knew that this was going to be the Final Four. Right? Like, let's go all the way back to 2 months ago when the Big Ten officially kicked off. We're like, okay, Alabama, they're going to be in. They run the table in the SEC, they're in. Clemson, they can run if they can lose to Notre Dame and win everything else, they're in. Notre Dame, they can lose one game and it be to Clemson, they're fine too, they're in. And then you have Ohio State out of the Big Ten. Folks, this was the Final Four. What's wrong? We are literally arguing about where teams fall in a stupid ranking system that means nothing. It's embarrassing. I feel bad for you people who are losing sleep over this. Who cares? The Bearcats, who cares that they didn't make the playoff? They weren't going to, because it's not because they got screwed. It's not because the college football playoff system is out to get the little guy. It's because the little guy's a little guy. This is coming from someone who has grown up. I'm 5'5". I've grown up short my whole life. I know what it's like. But it's not tall enough. It sucks, but you do your best. Here we are. Here I am. Here they are. Here we go. It's fine. System didn't screw over the Bearcats. You know what the Bearcats can do? And this goes back to my point earlier. You can't control the Memphises, the SMUs, the Tulanes. You can't control those opponents. And by the way, some of those are top 25 opponents, but none of those have that punch that you're looking for in a weighted opponent that's going to give you that credibility to jump some Power 5 schools. So it is your job as athletic director, and I don't have the name in front of me. I don't even know who the athletic director is at Cincinnati, but that individual's job at Cincinnati is to not sit there and complain that, the playoff just doesn't respect us. That person's job is to, they're not going to give us the respect that we think we deserve. So what do we got to do to get that respect? Complaining should not be one of your solutions. Going undefeated and winning a conference title clearly isn't good enough. UCF proved that back-to-back seasons years ago. Cincinnati did nothing different than they did and yet expected a different result. Gee, I wonder why they're not in the playoff. Here's what they need to do. You can't control who you play in the conference. You damn well can control who you play in the non-conference. This is why I mocked UCF years ago. Florida was willing to do, I think it was like a 2 or a 3 for 1. Florida was willing to play at UCF if UCF played at Florida for 3 years or 2 years or whatever. And UCF said no. Well, screw you, UCF. You deserve that then. Right? The thing is, beggars can't be choosers. You cannot be at the bottom of the totem pole and then try to dictate everything. It doesn't work that way. You can't have a little window of success and act like you have made it. That's my biggest complaint about programs who aren't Power 5. They have a little stretch of success. They go on deep tournament runs, or they go undefeated a few years in football, and then they think that they're one of the big boys. That drives me nuts. Be proud of who you are and what you've accomplished, and be the best at that, and be the best at that to the point to where people have no choice but to notice you. Look at Gonzaga. You think Gonzaga has ever wasted time in college basketball trying to say, look at me, look at us, look what we're doing in this smaller comp? No, they just said, we're going to keep doing what we do in this conference. We're going to keep dominating it. And the more that they've done that, when you embrace what you have instead of always trying to aim for something bigger, you turn what you have into something bigger. That's what Gonzaga is, living proof of that. We've yet to see a team do that in football because they get so damn impatient. UCF goes undefeated for 2 straight years, and they think they're Alabama. Cincinnati, a year after getting blown out and shut out by Ohio State a year ago, goes undefeated this year, and their fans and them want to try and convince me and everybody else that they're Ohio State. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to go 5-6 years of dominant play. You got to get a couple top 25 wins against Power 5 opponents under your belt. You got to get more than just one conference title under your belt. You got to get top recruiting classes under your belt. And Luke Fickell is checking a lot of those off. But if you think he's going to check all of those off in 1 or 2 years, you're crazy. It's a slow burn. You'll get there. You can't control who you play in the non-conference. You can't control who you play in the conference schedule. You can't control who you play in the non-con. Cincinnati should be getting bigger quality teams on their schedule. And instead they have Austin Peay on their schedule. They had Western Michigan. Again, this was before COVID hit. Now, they did have a Nebraska on their schedule. But let me ask you this, folks. Let's say Cincinnati did beat Nebraska this year. Would that make them good enough to make the playoff? No. But you know what would make you good enough? 2 wins. 2 wins over one of those type of schools, right? Get Iowa and Nebraska on there. They don't even have to be the top of the Power 5s. Get those mid-level teams. Get Iowa in there. Get Nebraska in there. Beat 2 Big Ten teams in the non-conference schedule. Go undefeated in your conference, win a conference title, be undefeated. Boom. The committee has no choice but to put you in. But when you only play one Power 5 school and then you beat up on Austin Peay and Central Michigan and those schools, and people are saying, well, why not? Alabama, they play La Citadel. Ohio State plays Miami of Ohio. Oh, by the way, Cincinnati did have Miami of Ohio on their non-conference schedule as well. What is that doing for you? Cincinnati, what is that doing for you? Oh, it pads the wins. You play in the American Conference. If you're trying to convince me you're Alabama, you have a lot of padded wins in your conference already. Get the Miami of Ohio's off your schedule. Even if you're playing the worst of the Big Ten, even if you're playing Rutgers, even if you get Tennessee, all right, get those teams on. Beat those teams. Convince everyone else that you are capable of competing with those level teams on a week-in, week-out basis. You can't pull off an upset one week and then go back to narrowly beating teams out of the American Conference the rest, which, by the way, they've blown out all their opponents. Don't get me wrong, but you see my point. You cannot continue to schedule those weak-ass teams every non-conference season and then expect people to have your back come Selection Sunday. It will not work, college football. It will not work, Bearcats. So stop it. And anyone out there who continues to try to feed the BS that, oh, this is rigged, you're an enabler. You're making this harder each year. And then Luke Fickell is going to be a quitter. He's going to leave Cincinnati. He's going to go take a Power 5 job elsewhere, not make the playoff there, when you could stay at Cincinnati. It's called just doing your job and changing your approach. If Luke Fickell thinks he can coach at Cincinnati the way he would at a Power 5, he's dumb. You can't do that. You cannot treat the Cincinnati job the way you would in Auburn, the way you would at Michigan State. Auburn doesn't have to challenge themselves in the non-conference. They just have to go undefeated. In the SEC, they're in the playoff. Cincinnati, they don't have to challenge themselves in the non-conference. They can go undefeated in conference. They're not making the playoff. It's much different. You got to approach it differently. You got to schedule differently. You got to challenge yourself. Because if you are trying to tell me that you are in Alabama, a Clemson, or an Ohio State, or Notre Dame, if you're trying to tell me that you're one of those teams, then what you need to do is actually challenge yourself in the non-conference. Because I promise you, those other 4 teams I just mentioned, they have the same results that you do, if not by a bigger point spread, if they played the American schedule. Period. So whatever. It is what it is. They're not in the playoff. They shouldn't be in the playoff. I don't want them in the playoff. They don't deserve to be in the playoff. Good team, good quality team. They might compete with Georgia. Who knows? UCF, they challenged, Auburn. Good for them. More power to you. But if you think one bowl game makes you in the running to make the playoff next year, no, you got to beat good quality teams more than just one time a year. Just saying. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Let's see. James Jones, he's upset. Come on, Justin. You've been on the air for going on 40 minutes. Get off that horse and move on. Surely you have something else to talk about. Jim in Miamisburg. No, absolutely I don't. There is more stuff I'm about to go on into now. And if you don't like it, that's too damn bad. I mean, I'm just telling you right now, that's all people have been talking about is Cincinnati. That's all people have been talking about. Now, if I was telling you what you want to hear, that Cincinnati should be in the playoff, then Jim from Miamisburg, you'd be like, oh man, keep it up, Kinner. Keep fighting for the Bear. Get out of here. All right. Is Ohio State Clemson a rivalry? I don't think so. I don't think it is. So you take a look. Here is Ohio State versus Clemson, the series. The very first matchup between the two dates all the way back to 1978. All right, Ohio State, Clemson, December 29th, 1978. We all remember that. There's a lot of storylines that come out of that game. Remember that one? All right, Clemson, Clemson, Ohio State, Clemson gets the best of them. They come away with that win right there. But the thing that was interesting about that, it was 17-15. Clemson comes away with the win. Wasn't a high-scoring affair. That's all the way back in 1978, right? Like, that's a long time ago. Who cares? I don't really count that one in the series. Big picture, that's a part of it. But I want to talk about from this last decade. Clemson and Ohio State have run into one another 3 times in the last decade. Clemson owns Ohio State. Period. Folks, there's no other way around it. Dabo Swinney, remember how mad we got when Baker Mayfield took the flag and planted it in the block O in the middle of the field? Oh, we were furious. Dabo Swinney has done that. He's done that. He owns Ohio State. Urban Meyer is one of the best coaches of all time. Dabo Swinney owns Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer's never beat Dabo Swinney. Not at Ohio State. Ryan Day, first-year head coach, gets to run into Dabo Swinney in the college football playoff. Can't beat Dabo Swinney. Dabo Swinney owns Ohio State. Is this a rivalry? It's not a rivalry. It is not a rivalry until Ohio State beats Clemson. This college football playoff matchup is huge. It's ginormous. There is so much on the line. There is so much on the line coming up here in a few weeks. Because Ohio State, I'm reading these articles from 11 Warriors and from Bucknuts and Austin Ward with Letterman Road as a fan. They all do fantastic jobs, but to talk about the rivalry between these two, this isn't a rivalry. Clemson owns Ohio State. Like, Ohio State needs to get this win. This is bigger than just a playoff game. Because Ryan Day is trying to solidify himself as up there with Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban. The problem is that if you can't beat Dabo Swinney in back-to-back seasons, and this would be the 4th loss in the last 10 years to this program, you can't be up there with Clemson unless you beat Clemson. You have to beat Clemson. You have to beat Trevor Lawrence. You have to redeem the loss from last year. You have to put the dominance that Clemson has had over Ohio State in the past. Period. All right, like I'm just at the point now where this matchup I'm nervous about. I'm nervous. I'm uncomfortable. I'm excited. It's all of the above. But Ryan Day has an opportunity here. Let me ask you this, folks, about Ryan Day. What is his staple win? Is it just because he beat Michigan his first year? This isn't a shot at Ryan Day. Ryan Day's been fantastic. I don't think he called a very good game this past Saturday, by the way. I think he did a horrible coaching job this past Saturday against Northwestern. I don't know how many carries it took before he finally realized that maybe I should run the ball and stop trying to force the pass. But that's a conversation for later. What is his staple win? When you think of Ryan Day at Ohio State, his big win is what? Urban Meyer had a handful of them. What is Ryan Day's? I don't know. I don't think he has one yet, which is fine. This is only his second season. The second season doesn't necessarily count. I mean, it counts, but I mean, it's not like it's been a full season. He's, you've had off weeks. You've had a shortened season. You didn't get non-conference. Their chance to go up against Oregon earlier in the year, that got wiped away. He doesn't have that staple win yet. The staple win for Ryan Day is coming up against Clemson. Ryan Day, if he beats Clemson, he will be elevated right to the front of the line with Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney. If he loses to Dabo Swinney again, that's going to be a very tough argument to win for Buckeye fans, period. It's not me hating on him. I'm just saying, like, think about the perception. If it was the other way around, if Ryan Day and Urban Meyer just owned Dabo Swinney this past decade, would we be talking about Clemson as one of the top teams or one of the premier teams of college football? We wouldn't. We wouldn't let that happen. Clemson fans will not let Ohio State have that if they lose again. This is bigger than a playoff game. This is a legacy game for Ryan Day. This is a huge game for the program for Ohio State, especially losing last year the way that they did. Justin Fields versus Trevor Lawrence, Ohio State versus Clemson, Dabo Swinney versus Ryan Day. The coaches are already talking. The coaches are leaving comments. The video leaked of Ryan Day talking about wanting to, well, there's a lot of non-FCC approved words, right? But, man, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun build. I don't believe it's a rivalry. I don't think it's a rivalry game. Ohio State doesn't have a win. If you don't have a win in a series of matchups, it can't be a rivalry. It just can't. Ohio State wins on New Year's Day. It's easily the biggest rivalry in college football outside of our Ohio State-Michigan game. Folks, Ohio State, Rutgers college basketball tips off right now.
Welcome to Ohio State basketball from Learfield IMG College. The